Thank you so much for having me here. So I did a TED Talk a little while ago, actually several years ago, and it got a lot of attention, which is really fun. And it was really interesting that the work that I've done really has inspired a lot of folks around the country and around the world doing urban revitalization strategies to prove you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. And the interesting thing that I get, a question that I almost always get at the end of the talk when I show the work that I've done and helped inspire, and is, oh my gosh, well, what do we do in a community if we don't have someone like you? And so what I want to do today is kind of break it down. I want to give you the secret sauce to figuring out what it is y'all need to do in order to come up with a real strategy, a project in your communities that are designed to make it what you only could think possible. So we're going to start with this. My first project was this place, and so we break it down to this kind of thing. Identifying, actually, let me go back. What's the need? You listen, you talk to people, you ask them what the problem is, and then you do the market kind of analysis, and you come up with a really desirable way to address that need. And then you come up with a project that's going to meet that, and you look for seed money to work to implement it. Then you road test the idea, and then you refine it over time, and then you build it out. And you look for much bigger money to help make it happen. And so we're going to start with these particular projects. This was one of my very first projects, the project that kind of launched a whole bunch of things. We knew what we needed in our community was open space. We didn't really have parks and open space in our neighborhood. People kept telling us about it. So this was a dump that my dog literally pulled me into. We found out that there was a little seed grant that came through the U.S. Forest Service to the New York City Parks Department. So that little $10,000 seed grant paid my entire salary, bought lunch for a lot of people, helped do the kind of community cleanups that we needed to happen, allowed me to talk to people to help turn this park into something that kind of looked a little bit like this, because we built in other partners to make it happen. Then we started thinking about, well, how do we program this thing? How do we refine it? So we had our little seed investor, our little angel investor, but then we started to think about, well, how are we going to get people to really come and use this piece of open space? And so we started working on to bring boating programs and things like that into the community. And this was able to garner more than enough attraction to the fact that suddenly much bigger money started to look. This is our mayor, Bloomberg, and our Parks Commissioner, who decided to invest $3 million into the transformation of this little street end park. And it turns out that it went from this into this. Now, this is the Hunts Point Riverside Park that is now just this really strategic, active part of our community, the kind of place where no one thought that in a place like this environmental and economic nightmare that was the South Bronx, that something like this could even possibly exist. But yet it's become this incredibly active part of the local community, and this is what we turned into. Oh, and yes, and I got married there with the dog who led me there as my flower girl. So, and this is her with the award that literally, it's a national award that we won for excellence in urban design, and there's Zena with her award. She launched my career, literally, obviously. So the next kind of thing, again, looking at, well, what is the need? We had a whole bunch of them. We needed, access to sort of safer streets. We had so much truck traffic and things going in our community. We needed traffic calming. We also needed stormwater management, as opposed to building bigger sewage treatment plants. We also needed things like the development of greener open space. We needed physical, aesthetically pleasing things. Heard about this thing called greenways. And through that kind of being out there looking around for projects that could help make these things happen, found out about a federal highway proposal that would actually bring in, if I wrote the proposal properly, $1.25 million to develop a greenway plan for our community. We got that, and this was the beta version of it. It mostly just served as traffic calming. Then later on, we were able to leverage that into about $50 million worth of investments that were brought to then make it even a safer, more stormwater management, air quality improvements, definitely opportunities for traffic calming, definitely more physically appealing, and also provided connectivity because this greenway, this linear path, connects us to the larger greenway movement within New York City as well. And so these are just some of the versions that we've gone through. And this is the piece that I love the most, because this is the part that connects us to a 400-acre park on the other side of the waterfront there. And this little access way is going to build that as well. Yeah. And this is going to be done this summer, which is very exciting. Last but definitely not least is the opportunity that we had to really help people in our community connect both a personal as well as a financial stake in improving the quality of life in their own communities. And so when we were working specifically to bring open space and waterfront development projects to our community, we realized that the city was bringing people in to do that work. So what was the need? The need was we had a community that had a 27% unemployment rate. So how could we connect our community to the environmental transformation that was happening there? And so we started one of the country's first green-collar job training and placement systems that supported that, and worked to support people to develop wetland restoration, training, kind of skills, anything from urban forestry management, learning how to clean up contaminated lands. And we worked specifically, and it was really hard because we got the seed money to do that through a congressional appropriation. And it was sort of like a venture capital model at that point, because we got a good bit of money, but it was a very expensive program. And then we had to we realized that was completely unsustainable. So again, we refined it, and then we got the project down to a much more manageable cost so we could train a lot more people. So that was the real, version that we had to work on with that kind of success rate. And so now, so that was when I worked with Sustainable South Bronx and was working on the grassroots level in my hometown. I've worked nationally for the past 5 years at this point and realized that what we really needed to do is create a kind of project that allowed for us to really think about how do we support our hometowns. Now, everyone's heard of homeland security, and for the most part, doesn't make people feel really safe, right? But our hometowns is something that everybody really wants to support on some level, even if you have a problematic relationship with it, and you want it to be secure, right? I know, believe me, I know. But and a laboratory is the way that you develop those research and development projects to help make it happen. So I'm starting a new project called Hometown Security Laboratories with the idea to really play out these models for sustainable built environmental transformation. So again, my beta here was using real estate development as a platform for social, environmental, and economic change, to really use it as a way to increase economic diversity within our communities through the development of mixed income housing and mixed use commercial development as a way to address the kind of unintended consequences of integration. Because if we really stop to think about it, just when you think about integration, and pre-segregation, or rather pre-segregation in Black communities, there was a lot more integrated communities. So it wasn't uncommon for a Black doctor to live near a Black janitor, so to speak, right? But once integration happened, the social fabric of those communities changed because people who were able to afford to leave those places did. And so what we're trying to do right now with the idea of using real estate development as a tool to increase economic diversity, we're trying to address the fact that right now there are only two kinds of real estate development in poor communities. The kind that assumes that the neighborhood's going to get better and then just gentrify, or the kind that's going to just maintain a level of poverty. And you see it through the type of economic developments that are brought into those communities. And so what we're trying to do now is address that through the development of the kind of projects that we're bringing in. And so that we're not saying, oh, we're just going to bring in only affordable housing, liquor stores, 99-cent stores, and things of that nature, the kind of things that only service truly only poor people. But instead, we're going to create the kind of environment that's going to allow people to really want to stay in a community, even though they could afford to leave it. But it's got to be attractive enough for them. So to start, again, our beta version is this. We're now in negotiation with Amtrak that owns this building. Doesn't look like much, I get it. It's an old rail station that was actually designed by Cass Gilbert, one of America's most noted architects. But the rail station closed down as a rail station in the 40s. And this is literally the first thing when people walk into our community from the subway, this is the first thing they pass by. And so, but Amtrak closed it down as a rail station, and then they turned it into sort of a mini strip mall. And so there were places like, there was a pizza store, a hair salon, a strip club. It was all really lovely stuff. They got tired of being a landlord. They shut it all down. Next thing you know, and so for me, growing up in a place like the South Bronx, the last thing in the world that I wanted to see was another abandoned building. So I called them up and said, I'm really interested, and I emailed them and said, I'm really interested in getting a long-term lease. I had no real plan for what to do with the building. I figured it would take him a year to get back to me anyway, and in the interim, I'd come up with something. Within 72 hours, I was talking to the head of real estate. And so what we're doing right now is thinking about what do we do with this building, or not. We already know what we're going to do with the building right now. But the whole point is that we worked specifically to think about this building is now considered an eyesore. Let's fix it up right away, even before we get through all the negotiations, just so people will understand that this is something that we can do here. So we hired a bunch of kids from our community to be the people to see what it's like to feel like to transform a site. And so they were the ones who came up with the idea to do a mural on this project, and we gave them the opportunity to really be the people to work at it. So to come up with the concept and then implement it, and design what they'd implemented as well, and be the people who people in the local community would see as real change makers as it happened. And then what people didn't quite understand was that as we were working to transform this site, was that we were already listening to what they'd already told us that they wanted to see happening in the community. They made it really clear to us when we were listening to them in the first part that they wanted things like coffee shops. They wanted, exercise-based fitness studios. They wanted things like that. And it was so good to have kids like this in their community being the people who were transforming it. And so that's what we're working on developing right now. And this is what, hopefully, fingers crossed, is what it will look like when it's all said and done. We'll be working on a partnership with Starbucks to help make it happen. And then, or at least the coffee shop part, and then also developing the class-based fitness studio too. And so that's our beta version as our insertion into real estate development that's designed to really support local communities. This is, as we refine the model, this is the real deal. This is a former juvenile detention facility. Actually, it's right around the corner from the house I grew up in. My dad was a janitor there, and it was known all along as this place that was just a terrible, terrible place for kids. It would break them. Even before they was not there to rehabilitate them the way, unfortunately, juvenile justice does right now. But it's been closed for the past year, for the past almost 2 years at this point, and just sitting there. And so we encourage the city to reconsider that site as a place where something beautiful could flourish. And so we're interested in looking at that site as sort of like the hinge area and really thinking about it as a model for post-industrial cities around the country. Because the yellow area is where I'm sorry, my voice is I really needed some water. I should have done that. But the yellow area is the place where people live. That's the residential area. The blue part is where the industry is. Oh, bless your heart. Thank you. I was magically it appears. Oh my God. I was totally parched. And so anyway, but again, like every post-industrial city around the country, there are assets there. You might have to look a little hard for them, but they are there. Like, for example, we are connected to the area that has some public transportation, and also the Greenway is coming as well. So, but right in the middle of where those areas meet is this little hinge area where zoning and land use kind of doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. So what we're thinking about is turning this site into a catalyst for mixed income housing, mixed use commercial development, and really looking at what are the economic trends in the future in technology and apparel manufacturing and things like that, and bringing it to bear in these places, building excellent open space and all sorts of things like that, and also commercial and retail opportunities for people to spend money. And so one of the things that we've done is sort of look back at some of the other things we've done. For example, looking at, we brought a fab lab to the community, which is where you link personal computers and fabrication machines together so people can basically be computers and inventors in their own right. We did this back in 2006 where some young people in our program found this essentially garbage, these pallet boxes, ripped them apart, pulled them together, and then transformed them into this type of furniture. This is called rapid prototyping, and a really interesting way of doing business. And we're starting a new program to kind of facilitate that called Startup Box South Bronx, a technology education and entrepreneurship program. But then also, thinking about how real estate development can be the transformational piece where these kind of things happen. Right now, this particular street where this juvenile detention facility is literally helps people, because it's such a lonely area that nothing really happened on. Right now, it's known in the neighborhood as the place where truckers go to pick up a prostitute. But what would happen if you did something like this there? It's a little bit different. Doesn't have that kind of appeal. It's a very different kind of appeal, thank goodness. But the idea of of doing these types of real estate development is not to just have this site where it's just one beautiful little place, but it's to raise the bar for what passes for real estate development throughout the entire area. to show that you don't have to move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one, to expect that people don't have to measure their success by how far they leave communities like this, and that people, even though they could afford to leave, have reasons to stay in their own community. And that's why it's so important to think about using real estate development as that transformational tool to allow these kind of things to happen, because the bottom line is we really cannot afford to wait to build the quality of life that we want to see in our communities. This is one of my favorite quotes in the world because it really speaks volumes to the kind of impatience that we should have as we think about community development and the way that we want to transform our lives, because no one rises to low expectations. And if we build our communities and say, which says to the people, you were born and raised here and you are never really going to survive and move forward ahead, that's what we will build. Those are the kind of people that we will grow. We can use real estate development as a transformational tool. And by hook or by crook, I hope you're all with me. Thank you very much.